Gonna go ahead and call the meeting in order. I'm asking the three go to call the roll.
Rep. Jones, Rep. Chasson,
Here.
Ms. Jacob, here, Mr. Schroyer,
Here.
Mr. Morgan,
Here.
Dr. Smith,
Here.
Dr. Blair, here, Ms. Lyles, here, Mr. Kearney,
Here.
here, Mr. Carter,
Here.
Ms. Cooper, Mr. Ivy,
Here.
Mr. Giovatello,
Here.
Mr. Shelton,
Here.
Mr. Jones, Ms. Cordell, here, Ms. Miracle Kilbert, Coach Curtis,
Here.
Mr. Aubrey,
Here.
Ms. Messier.
Well, so members, you received a copy of the minutes from the October 2025 meeting, and I get a motion to approve. Thanks. Motion. Motion by. Second by line. All right. All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion passes. All right. So at this time, just want to welcome everybody back. We appreciate y'all for coming again. This is indeed our final meeting. Just want to spotlight the tremendous engagement we've had thus far. We've had a wave of incredible productive conversations, and it's driven like real momentum, and it's brought us to this exciting point today. On behalf of myself and Rep. Young, let me thank everyone, and as well the dedicated staff of the Board of Regents, the Attorney General's office, and everyone, all the task force members for their tireless work on this. Let's see. At this time, I'd like to invite Ms. Bree Golden Phillips, Ms. Jolie Lives, and Mr. Skip Phillips for a presentation.
Thank you, everyone. Good morning. And just to echo Rep. Chasson's sentiments, thank you so much for all of the hard work that you all have done on this task force. Since the last meeting in October, we've had a really robust conversation on the legislative recommendations and the best practices to go weekly report. And since then, several of us have met in committee subgroups to kind of discuss and work through a lot of this. And so I definitely want to thank all of you for all of your hard work on this. All of the recommendations that you see before you on the supplemental on the side have been basically have been the hard work of all of you in this conversation, the conversation that we will continue to have as we move forward with working through adopting the report recommendations. So I want to start us off and directors into the screen. We're going to split this in two different ways. We're going to go through the legislative recommendations. There are 5, and then we're going to go through the best practices of the report. And so with that being said, we're going to move on to the legislative recommendations, and they're going to be segmented in 5 areas: active agents, high school NIL laws, expansion of college NIL laws, a discussion on the trust accounts that we mentioned the last time, and then the study resolution on athletic department. Moving on to the first piece with respect to the expansion of athlete agent, the athlete agent registration process, and Skip and Joel, please feel free to hop in and speak on this. The conversations that we've been having is making sure that we expand the athlete agent registration laws, as we mentioned in the last meeting. Right now, we're just trying to go ahead and catch us up and update the law to make sure that there are duly licensed and trained individuals representing themselves as athlete agents. So as we move forward in recommendations for the conversations that we have, to expand the definition of what is an agent contract to make sure that it's inclusive as a written agreement to that involves the use of an athlete's name, image, and likeness. And also we've had discussions of broadening the definition of an athlete agent to include individuals who represent student athletes in NIL matters. And then in addition to that, another piece of this is making sure if we expand this registration process to those representing so there's athlete agents who handle NIL matters to make sure that you're appropriately trained and that they can pass a background check. With respect to the trainings, we will work with the Attorney General's office to make sure at the least that they are trained on the state laws of what their obligations or responsibilities are as an athlete agent in the state of Louisiana, making sure that they understand what their duties are to the athletes that they represent, whether in high school or in college. And so at the day, this task force shoots to move forward with adopting this as a recommendation for the report. We will continue to have conversations with the Attorney General's office to make sure that we are able to have a well-rounded piece of legislation and we're able to sort it out as to what this training looks like and what does the background check process look like as it goes through the registration process. Yeah,
just, thank you. The idea here was to capture many people that we can involve in this process, reaching out to involve speaking out. Regulate as best as we can. There's always going to be sound, right? We can't. But what we can do is make sure that included some categories of folks, marketing reps, who may view themselves as doing something different, but really, in fact, they're included in this definition because they are engaged with student athletes for the purpose of putting together some sort of a deal, right? One of the things we may want to include in this legislative remedy is either providing a remedy. So, for example, we had talked, I think, about considering whether a contract that is entered into with an unlicensed agent would mean potentially that the agent could not be compensated. Right? We have some basis for doing this in our law, that the lawyers and others. And so you would give the Attorney General, for example, the opportunity or the chance to recoup that money and give it to the student athletes. Ed, coach, the street agents you were talking about in some of our meetings, you identify those people and you go after them and you try to get back as best you can the ill-gotten gains, as it were, and give it to the student athletes. Those kinds of enforcement things, we'll need to work through those, whether it's in the statute or whether we'll put it in a regulation that general will promulgate. And we'll probably want to do some regulations just to lay out specifics. Keep this very kind of general like it is now, and then promulgate some regulations about what the registration process looks like. Hang it on a website somewhere so a student athlete can go to it and find out if their person is contacting them is in fact licensed. But then all of the requirements. One of the things that we had talked about that we liked was at least an initial background check. That's not anything new. Under the professional law that gets done. So it's good enough for the NBA, it ought to be good enough for us. Right? Some of those kinds of things to give us some enforcement opportunities with respect to agents that are reaching out to our student athletes trying to put these. It's not as troublesome at the college and university level as it is at the high school. I thought that was one of the things that came out of our discussion. But that's a different category, and we could probably be maybe a little more interested in those folks initially anyway. Because folks from colleges and universities are pretty sophisticated about this. But that's kind of the idea. And the Attorney General, I can tell you in our discussions with her, it's all on board. This wants to be a big part of this, maintain the database like we're doing now, and expand it, then working with others about with this education program. And probably with some sort of an annual refresher. Legislature may see fit to make some changes. I don't know what Congress is going to do with the Stores Act. They have been watching that, so right now. But, so just to make sure they stay current. So and then the beauty of this to me is that a parent, or a student athlete who wants to know if to deal with somebody legit, they go to the website and see that this particular agent, marketing person, whoever, has registered, has cleared all those hurdles, and at least has done the things that we have said that they must do in order to represent these student athletes. So really like this recommendation.
I have a question. But is this going to be applicable to an athlete not from Louisiana, but the agent from their state, right? Let's say we are recruiting an athlete from California and their agent from California. Is this applicable?
Interesting choice of law kind of question. Very different.
any transaction that's affected the state. If you got somebody who goes to California and they put student out to California, I'm not sure we can reach territorially unless the sponsor, but I'll just use my friend Gordon's bad example. Gordon's making NIL deal with somebody in California. I think I would say that would cover. But if it's Gordon of California making a deal with a student athlete in California just because they're going to end up playing in Louisiana, I'm not so sure.
And also, even though this is a, a conversation about whether or not we're moving forward with adopting it, rest assured that after this, especially after draft legislative report, once we watch the legislation, and of course, working with the involved to make sure that they're starting to talk about capture. We want to be able to capture that as well, whether or not, we can have the restrictions to be able to regulate it, to be sanitation strictly. So we can continue to work through some of the small nuances.
There's one other thing. That point, through the National Association of Attorneys General, people are going to be picking up on the play, especially if we don't get any national legislation. That's a nice, neat vehicle for us coordination activities like this, and maybe promoting some agreements, cross state line agreements that will address some of the stuff in talking.
With regard to the agent registration, would the custodial parent have to register?
No, it's an agent registration.
And what if a non-custodial parent engages in this activity?
If the non-custodial parent is acting as an agent or as a parent.
As activities, yes, agent type activities.
If you are acting in a representative capacity for someone else in order to put one of these bills together, I would view that as being. If I was advising my child, or because my child is 17 and can't enter into a contract, then I would say no. I'm not.
So though he is an agent, though he's a parent, but he's not a custodial parent, he would have to register.
Custodial parent, this context is not positive of who does what. You're thinking about who has the authority to approve or enter into a contract. Custody doesn't always have it. Right? I mean, I think if you remember the discussion we had about when you do child's parents are married, you've got a different legal scheme than if you've got parents who are no longer married or were never married. How you may have to go to court to get the authority to enter into a legal contract for alignment. That would apply, but it wouldn't have anything to be necessarily custody. A little different. And I know sometimes in the educational context, custody has some meaning with respect to decisions in the academic setting, particularly in the high schools and elementary schools, but it really doesn't apply to.
Sometimes kids are not with you. Sometimes the parents disagree on.
Look, I mean, here's it's going to sound a little bit right. There's going to be some problems that arise here that you're not going to be able to right? I mean, that's just truth. And you're going to have parents who don't agree. And so they're both advising it differently. It's 16 or 17. I don't know how we write legislation. So then is there a dispute resolution process? Yeah, that one of them go to the court and say, if we're married, that's a conversation over the kitchen table, perhaps. But if they're not married, then sometimes you just got to go to court. The judge says we're going to do what's in the best interest. Right? So I mean, it's not that we don't have a remedy, it's just that we don't have a remedy within this framework.
Any other additional discussion on this item?
Coach Curtis, I'm not sure we fix this problem altogether, but it does give us a hammer if we find some out there, renegades.
You need that, and so that's a good beginning.
And we may be tweaking this as we go along. I found out that's I'm not sure we want to go here yet, but we found out there's a big problem with these unlicensed, unregistered agents, street agents. You can always make this criminal. If the legislature so decide, right? You can always make this theft. What my thought would be to say that an unlicensed agent cannot receive compensation for putting one of these deals together. And if we determine that there is such a thing going on, we declare that an unfair trade practice, which gives the Attorney General the authority to go and file a suit, try to recover. You do that a few times, send that message, and so maybe that helps. So,
Any other discussion? So I'd like to ask for a motion to adopt the recommendation to be included in the report. Got a motion. I think the third, second by Johnny. That's right. You heard of it. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? All right, motion passes. Next up, establishment of high school NIL laws.
Thank you, Representative Chasson. So as Representative indicated, this proposal will establish a basic framework and create some safeguards for the establishment of some high school NIL laws. And really the parameters of this would require written parental consent for a legal guardian for a student to participate in NIL transaction and activities. This law would permit, under this proposal, athletes in high school would be permitted to earn compensation for NIL activities, except otherwise prohibited by law, which I'm going to get to. This proposal speaks to some prohibited NIL deals types of restricted histories and limit compensation during school-related activities, whether it's academic or athletic related. And just to kind of give you the running list, like I mentioned, you are, as high school student, would be authorized to participate in high school NIL. You would need written parental authorization. There are a list of prohibited industries, which would be, alcohol and alcoholic beverage industries, adult entertainment, drug and cannabis, controlled substances, tobacco, weapons, casino, and gambling. And additionally, there will be some permissibility for coaches or the high school itself to prohibit NIL compensation if it would interfere with athletic or academic related activities, including classes, practices, competition, travel, tutoring, community service, etc. So merely speaking, a student would just have to reschedule. If, for example, if they have a NIL photo shoot, something with Pepsi or Gatorade, they would just have to reschedule it if it's during that time, should the high school or the coach request the student to do so. Additionally, we are requesting the LHSAA, also in collaboration with the university, to into this task force to create bylaws that are consistent with state law and to develop and update education and training materials as to educate the parents, students, coaches, faculty, ensuring that athletes remain eligible and remain compliant with the laws. And then also with respect to the continued engagement of interested members of the task force in collaboration with the LHSAA, we wanted to have a conversation to possibly explore the feasibility of a disclosure process for NIL agreements. As Jolie mentioned, during one meeting, the NCAA has entertained a proposal to make sure that those in high school as early as their junior year have to report on the NIL go at their NIL deals that exceed $600. So having some early conversation with LHSAA to see how can we possibly have this done a little bit sooner, or at least kind of introduce this to students as early as their freshman year to make sure that they are ready for the disclosure process and educate them.
Right. We'll go ahead and open up the floor for any discussion. Anyone? We're not quiet today, we're quiet today.
Let's just say, I want to make sure that we're getting the issues that the high school are seeing.
Yeah, I think it does. I think it covers it.
adequately. I do think that the conversation with, either, the executive committee or the commissioner and a group of leaders, that might be a little more, definitive. But we have the ability to send out information that would be required for an athlete to read and sign in order to participate in play. As we do with our substance abuse agreement, with our eligibility agreements, we could include a bullet point that would refer them to a website, but give them the basic information of what we're trying to accomplish, and then have them sign that in order to compete. That way, at least we know everybody has had the opportunity to look, read, and then further investigate if they want to. So I think we're on the right path. I think there's more that we can add to it from the LHSAA perspective. For those of y'all that are not familiar, we meet in January. Proposals were made by either individual or principal, usually backed up by another one or the executive committee. And then that's presented to the whole body and voted and it can go into our bylaws. And I think that there's a little more we can add from our perspective, but that's the conversation with them, not necessarily.
Anyone else?
I agree with everything Coach said. There's going to have to be some more conversations after January, after we go through our session. But I think we're on the right track. Having that documentation in their folders, when they come around with folder check to make sure everybody's on board is definitely be paramount. And we're on the right track. Due diligence, that's going to be the big hurdle that we have.
So let me ask you a question about this. Take over. So for the quarterback that you know, that's earning plus $100,000. With that, would they be able to abide by that? Or in your opinion?
Yeah, I mean, everybody. I think it's complex enough, but it's complex enough in the same voice to cover everybody. And we're definitely on the right track to get ahead of the train that's coming up.
All right, well, at this time, I'd like to ask for a motion to adopt this recommendation. Be included in the report. I have a motion. Motion. Slides. All right, all those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That motion passes. Up next, an update, possible revision for college and NIL laws.
This proposed recommendation already kind of does what a lot of the institutions have done so far, and is in line with state requirements as it relates to NIL. It is recommending that each institution, management board of institution adopt a policy implementing the provisions of state NIL laws by August 2026. To include elements that are already existing in state law. As I mentioned, a lot of the institutions represented in the firm are already doing that. Their policy should at a minimum address intercollegiate athletic compensation, how the institution is involved in NIL and revenue sharing, advising students on the use of institutional marks, representation by active agents, the availability of mandated workshops and resources, and how the policy is to move forward being enforced. In addition, this proposal was also recommending that there be a designated person who can be a point of contact for NIL requirements on each perspective.
Right, so for discussion.
The only question I had is, I know it says that each management board and post secretaries, because of the vastness of each institutions, difference in that would be more beneficial when it's required for institutions to do it versus management board to have a set. Like I worry about having ULS system, chief system, everyone having their own policy from the board perspective. via how it trickles down to the institutional nation of said funds. Just because of the resources that vast array of resources.
I know the way the current law is written already says that your management board has their own policy, which yours does as an example. And it kind of sets out the minimum framework, which basically is an adaptation of current law. And so I do know that once you are required to adopt the management board policy, you all have an opportunity to do your own policy. This can't deviate the management board that you're able to put in additional nuance that may be, applicable for your campuses, that may work for your campus culture, but resources that you already have available. So it really isn't deviating much that's already required that you already have. The only thing that the report is recommending is that you just have a point of contact for the client. Other than that, your management boards, for the most part, that are represented in this room, you all have a policy. So it's not really deviating much from the already law. It's just saying that you have to have these since you opt in into the house settlement and that you just have the policy because the law.
Yeah, I guess I just worry about the restricted nature that it could be. More money than some instances. That's all. That was all I'm concerned. Right, that's how.
So we'll open up the floor for any discussion. Seeing none, I'd like to ask for a motion to adopt this recommendation to be included in the report. Motion. So moved. Second. Slides. All right, all those in favor, signify by saying aye. And all those opposed, motion passes. All right, up next, trust accounts for high school athletes.
If you all remember during the last interim meeting, we had a conversation about the possibility of NIL kind of expanding into the moving law, which basically is a law for child actors that allows them to have trust accounts for 50% of the contract that they can turn into. We have had a lot of behind the scenes discussions of what implementation for that may look like. And I know I've heard from Dr. Brett Chaslon, who has a personal interest in this because it's based on conversations that we have confirmed from Coach Curtis and Dr. Smith on the possible secretary make sure that could come with individuals seeking high school athletes. There is a mutual in making sure that their money is safe for protecting that have something by the time they earn after high school is over with. I will say that after having additional conversation that we may possibly look into making as a study resolution, is to look at the feasibility of this project and say, let's stay, let's study this a little bit more. But I know that there are some concerns of the establishment of trust accounts, educating parents on trust accounts, and so forth and so on. So I did want to put that out there that the recommendation currently is making this a study resolution with the feasibility of possibly implementing this.
And this is personally, this is all in an attempt. So a lot of people know Uncle Fester, and saw the picture, but a lot of people don't know that Uncle Fester, being Mr. Cooper himself, more famously, so he was a child actor in one of Charlie Chaplin's movies, and he earned a decent amount of money, but then extrapolated in today's prices, to the tune of $50-60 million that his parents spent. And he was only able to recoup possibly $125,000 of money that was spent. So we want to go out our way to try and protect these kids. Internally, we had a Zoom meeting, and we're discussing, hey, listen, where do we want to set this mark at? And when I say great discussion, it was a great discussion. We don't want to stop the $2,500 NIL deal and be trying to lock away $500. That isn't what we're trying to approach. We're trying to approach the $50,000, $100,000, $200,000 mark. We just want to make sure to protect these kids, because even though we all know that we would go out our way to make sure we don't spend our kids' money, not everyone is in that financial position or even has that wherewithal to even care that much. You're my kid, that's mama, and that's what we want to protect. So I'll go ahead and open the floor for any possible discussion.
I do, but I do think a study resolution is a better way to approach this, just to get a baseline of some of the aspects. I can see where it can get very, very tricky. Since under the age of 17, so that's 16 under the mountain. I just think it does require that.
Anyone else?
I just wanted to say one thing, that what about the kids that we are losing? That once they get this money, they never had it before. We have a lot of debts now. And a lot of kids get incarcerated that never experienced that type of money. So we have to have some kind of educational thing. But then too, because being able to get that type of wealth, never have that type of wealth.
That's what Mr. Curtis has spoke about this previously before, as far as kids that what was the terminology? Jumping off a bridge.
Jumping off the bridge.
Jumping off a bridge, just to have that type of money and not having it anymore, but just the educational piece of it. We're already.
I'd like to add something if I may. I would like to see more socio-emotional kind of like programming and training with the students that would be coming into the NIL program. Because I think like that's a big blind spot with a lot of these young people. And so like being able to get, because I know the Head Start in Baton Rouge, like that's one of the first things that they start the kids out with, the social-emotional training, then it stops.
Right.
And we want to make sure we continue to build that up, because once they have a good understanding of good financial practices and how like to make sure that they are very aware of what's happening at that time, you know, socio-emotional training really helps with that.
Yes, yeah, that's another piece that we are also advocating for this month. So at this time, I'd like to ask for a motion to adopt this recommendations to be included in the report. Motion. Motion by Brian Knighton. Do I have a second? I'll second. All right, all those in favor, signify by saying aye. All those opposed. Motion passes. Next up, study resolution for athletic department fund.
And I know this came at a request of our athletic director, you know, looking involved in the insurance, I know, so they have to sign involved in this while we are focused on student protections and to athletes are aware of their rights in all of this. We do know that funding is a huge inclusive part of this. So we want to move forward with proposing like a study resolution on how athletic departments are funded. Make sure that we conduct a comprehensive analysis of funding structures of athletic departments and other post-secondary institutions to evaluate the financial implication of NIL activities as this continues to grow more and more by the day. I know that Mr. Ivy definitely was pushing for this as well, because it is something that is very necessary to you have anything, sir.
Yeah, I think as we talked about in our subcommittees, I mean, look, I mean, at the end of the day, we understand that finances of college athletics is changing on a daily basis. We've got to figure out how to manage it that allows us to be good students of resources that we do have. I think there are opportunities with this, and I think our state is very unique. When you look at the number of Division I institutions we have, coupled with the population size that we have, it just makes it very unique, and how do we manage it from a funding standpoint moving forward. So I think there's opportunities with this. I think there are strength numbers with this, so to speak. And I do think there needs to be some sort of study to figure out, all right, what's step A, B, C, or D, and then how do we manage that and take that approach moving forward. I think there are some synergies that we all have on our campuses. And I think if we can figure out how to navigate those collectively, I think that's going to help us. Will help us meet the need and certainly.
Absolutely. So we'll open up the floor for any discussion. Hearing none. I'd like to ask for a motion to adopt this recommendation. Do I have a motion? So I have a motion. Do I have a second? Joey Lyles. Well, everybody's in the holiday spirit, I can tell. Yeah, everybody ready to get out of here. I know that's our last meeting, we're gonna get out of here. So, all those in favor, the chairman. I just answered that. I get it. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion passes. Next up, best practices, prioritizing student mental health.
Right. And just to let you all know, as I mentioned, the legislative report recommendations are pieces that are actually going to translate into possible legislation for the upcoming 2026 legislative session. This next piece is recommended best practices. These are things that will not be in legislation, but that for institutions to keep in mind as they move forward with NIL. First up, and this is something that I remember during the first meeting, Coach Curtis was the first person to say this.
Yeah.
And it has been echoed every meeting ever since, just making sure that student mental health is prioritized, knowing that being a student athlete comes with an enormous amount of pressure, whether on a high school or collegiate level, making sure that institutions continue to educate students on available mental health resources. I remember that our student athlete, Ms. Miracle Tilford, who's been with us today, mentioned at the last meeting, she is an ambassador on her campus at the University of Indiana College to talk about what available mental resources are there for students who are experiencing, especially as a student athlete. So make sure that institutions find a way to continue to prioritize this, in addition to the things that are already mandated in state law with respect to financial literacy, wellness and time management, professionalism, also working mental health services and resources into that as well, as you continue to educate your student athletes on this new atmosphere that is tonight.
Any discussion?
Want to make sure that it is covering high school as well. But appreciate it.
Are these just suggestions or is this gonna be a mandatory thing that's gonna be required?
So, right now, the colleges are required to do per state law, only financial literacy, professionalism training, but there is an extension of mental health right now. We're not mandating anything, but there's something in the official legislative recommendation for only holding this. And then I think there will be conversations about ways to work out some mental health resources, advocate provider at least have conversations with institutions on what they be added to look at our impact.
And who kind of police just to make sure that these universities have structure in place?
Right now, the management board is supposed to police your policies and look like what they're supposed to do forward. But as I mentioned, mental health is not included in state law, but we are recommending that institution has mental health resources available for the student athletes and continue to advocate on what.
Is that just for NIL or is that for like post grad, post play, mental health as well?
There is mental health resources on campus, but right now, since it's the NIL task force piece, we're just making sure that it's prioritized in this area, but especially the board of regents prioritize and push even for mental health resources on every single campus, regardless of if you're a student or not.
Okay. And John, we can propose legislation to actually address that.
Yeah, I'd like to mandate having mental health resources for athletes, for regardless of NIL, or post grad, post play, mental health. I think transitioning to life outside of sports is more important than NIL also. So I think that could be a valuable resource to our athletes as well.
Absolutely.
I think it goes back to like we've talked about before. I've said this multiple times. First college athletics. We live in a world of unfunded mandates right now. And I think we just have to be really careful on what we do mandate or what we do require, because I agree with you. I would love to have, specific dedicated personnel for our student athletes that they manage us from a sports psychology standpoint, mental health, or whatever we need, but ultimately right now I don't have the resources. So it requires it, and that's going to take away from something that currently can't. So I would just Yeah, just go back to the world that we live in, unfunded mandates, and not specifically, this group or this state, but just state college athletics in general is in the unfunded mandate state. But we just need to make sure that we pay for it.
I'm not on the meeting, but can I just add one point to that? Because I know Coach has talked about this as well. So I think the framing for us is around student success. And this is part of that conversation. The Coach you talked about, and we've all talked about, the athletic opportunities is nested in the academic opportunity, right? Our goal is to make sure that we have more students who are completely and successful, and that their education is strong and rigorous and allows them to prepare for life. Perhaps their athletics will allow them to do so as well, but at a minimum, we want to make sure that we're getting students to and through, and they're prepared for life with their degrees and their credentials. So I do want to make sure as we frame this report, and I know Skip and Jolene really work on this on behalf of this great task force, that we really are clear about the academic opportunities that exist for our students and how important it is that we're elevating that student success within this frame of all this conversation. Did I get it right, Coach? All right. Great.
Let me ask this question, and I'll go, rather than mandate, could we ask the university to provide a course that would be recommended that a student take, regardless whether they're an athlete or not, on transitioning out of the college environment into the real world and expectations and all
For the university, you mean like specific each university has it?
yeah, for all of our state universities.
Yeah.
And I don't know how that works, but it would seem to me that if that course was available as an elective, then all of our academic counselors could certainly say, we want you to take this one. And at least we would have some professionals, teachers that would be able to help all students, not just athletes. We are available to all students to take this transition out of where you are to where you're going to be into the realization of what the real market value is, as opposed to where you are right now. So this thought to make it part of the curriculum that could be recommended that students take.
So coach, so to piggyback off that, a great example would be, for my microbiology degree at LSU, it was 8 hours of electives per week. And I took tennis, bowling, just something to relax your mind as opposed to the organic chemistry and physics. So at least one of those courses you can mandate in the course catalog by way of every school that like a sports psychology class, but not necessarily the harder psychology class. Just that's a great example. So
Yeah, I agree with you, especially if the students have the opportunity for electives. As a member of the Board of Regents, I think there is a broader question, there's a broader concern about the students, all students, especially in Louisiana, needing mental health. We still have a lot of first generation, so rather than just single out this for the athletes, we should have mental health
Exactly.
available.
Everyone.
And maybe if you are an athlete or a student leader, you shall be required maybe to take it, but as one of their electives, something like that. But I think I think we're hitting on that student mental health, in addition to financial literacy, is needed by all students. I think we all, I mean, at least I don't know this for a fact, but I think that on all of our teams, we all have counseling, mental health resources that are available to us, right? The question then becomes a ratio of counselor to student, right? And how do you manage the workload of said counselor and what's going on and balance the needs of a general student versus the challenges of a student athlete and the differences that come, right? They're similar in some ways because they're managing course workload and managing, some of them may be managing jobs, managing grades, managing personal issues, right, managing family problems, right? All these things, yeah, I mean, they're managing these things, but then you add the component of the athletic piece to their plate. And so how do they cope with those pressures that come along with it, especially some of them at the highest level with having to manage the social media onslaught that comes with this, right? And other things, and maybe they don't play as well as they would like. So how do you deal with those type of things? I think we're all having those, we all have those type of resources on it. It's just we don't have enough of it. And this is where I think that the course, I think, would be interesting in a transitional type course. But I would almost wonder if you go down that road, like I wonder about changing degree plans and degree audits and how do you manage what that looks like, right? And there's progress toward degree requirements that we have to have from an NCAA perspective, and how does that fit in with those PGD requirements and getting those benchmark percentages that we got to have. But I also think this could be an opportunity to potentially get outside individuals to come in with that help, right? Because ultimately what we want to do is take student from here to here. Well, the best person to be able to go from point A to point B is someone that's already in point B, right? That's already done. So how do you get professionals in the workplace to come do that? How do you get people to help? This is what you need to be thinking about as well. And I think we all, to some degree, do that with our local partners that we have within our respective communities. And so how do you codify that in a way that helps to move this forward? I think it's just, again, it goes back to bandwidth, it goes back to workload, it goes back to, how do we manage that and create this system in place to allow us to do that.
The discussion.
I want to add that too, that Ryan's absolutely right, because by the time you finally get a student athlete sometimes to agree to go see the counselor and do the health side of things, they don't have the capacity in that office to be able to take in the time to fashion. A lot of times we'll send somebody or they agree to go, but it's a month before they can actually see someone. And they've got those issues that they're trying to deal with. Being a student athlete obviously has more challenge than a regular student sometimes. But then they're sitting there for a month. By the time they actually get to their appointment, they either no longer want to go or the challenge has changed. So I think being able to have those resources is great, but I think every university has a challenge trying to get enough counselors and enough people to be able to see.
All right, this time I'd like to ask for a motion to adopt this recommendation. Got a motion? Don't move. Jones, we have a second. Tell a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed. Motion passes. Up next, adherence to Title IX, engaging in revenue share. So we'll go to uniformity, address international athletes NIL compensation policies.
And if you all remember earlier in the earlier meetings, Skip did a wonderful presentation on, the risk associated with possibly having international athletes participating in NIL bill, considering the risk associated with their student visas and whether or not that is considered as active or passive compensation and not wanting to risk their visas. And so I know there was a concern about having uniformity around this. I know that there's possibly one university advising students international students to move forward with it versus another university. And so because there is a concern about the possible risk to a student visa, the recommendation would be to address it in their policy and to prohibit it at this time until federal guidance is clarified through congressional action or federal court decision. Right now, there's a federal case pending regarding this with a former athlete from the state who has moved on to a different state. And so making sure that this gets clarified or that before we suggest that we possibly pursue to earn the NIL compensation, skip voting on that.
Hey, y'all remember this conversation not about eligibility, it's about racial status, violate terms of the visa study. This student athlete must be listed some their racial status. And since we last talked about this, frankly, it's got a little more complicated. Proposed was to limit the length of the student athlete visa to 2 visas per year. So it takes out a red shirt. And more stringent financial requirements. Not be able to have to demonstrate. The idea is to not make this a permanent residency type visa, but you come to school for 4 years and then you stay. Come to school for 4 years, that financial wherewithal, support yourself while you're getting your degree, and you go home, wherever that is. And so the compensation, receive compensation beyond that which is allowed by the visa, terms of the visa, that you violate the terms of the visa, which affects immigration status. And anything to do with eligibility, really doesn't have anything to do with your ability to do an NIL itself with risk. And so the problem is that if you can go down this road and you start advising international students on this, there's a considerable risk for institutions. And the consequences are so bad, me anyway, the thing that we would stay away from until we get some clarity from Congress. I know we kind of reached out, said this is an issue and need some clarity and tell us about the income and what about this 4 years and what about these personal interviews. So right now, until the dust settles on this, the better course seems to be a policy issue. We just simply say international students are in a different category, say anything, different category controlled by federal law, and nothing we're talking about here is going to affect that. Just can't do it. So they the idea about not about including either saying they're not going to say anything about this or not addressing international students at all. It's too much risk.
And then also, Rep. Young is currently working on drafting a letter. You mentioned this. He is drafting and reviewing a letter to send to members of the Louisiana congressional delegation, advising them of the concern that has been mentioned on the task force. And as soon as that draft has been reviewed, he will be sending that to each of you should any of the athletic directors wish to sign on for those letters that will go to the congressional delegation on this issue.
All right, we'll open the floor for any possible discussion. Steve, I'd like to ask for a motion to adopt this recommendation.
I do. That as it relates to this, so your comments about either staying silent or just not for, so within our own institutional campuses. So the way I read this is it's for institutional NIL participation, right? And not third party NIL as it relates. So well, actually it's driven by sources of the. Okay, so you can do something like you have a student, maybe some in microbiology. But if you had a student here studying microbiology and got a job on campus, that study that probably is not doing it. But if you got income from outside, and I don't think it would matter if you were a student trainer or if you had a third party deal with part of the source of the income. And it's a look, I'm sure there are, you get opinions all over the place on this. It's just kind of remind of drawing out the distinction. So, in terms of a policy decision about whether you national at all, or say this policy does not apply to the international students and we don't express anything. I don't know the policy. Okay. I don't know, that's just it's kind of a policy call, not so much a law call, so to understand that if you said to the student, international student athlete, it's okay if you're a student and it turns out to be wrong with it. Yeah, I mean, I guess I understand that piece, right? Like the off-campus source of income, like I understand that, but like I know there's been activity with international student athletes that when they go on they go off for a trip.
Or they get paid on foreign soil or doing something. That really is kind of the illustration. I'm not sure how United States enforces that. Sure. I'm more worried about stuff off campus, stuff on campus that is not related to stuff. Right. I don't really, I don't know how to do it, other than just say, you know, refer an international student out to somebody else for place or some just, consequences are just so bad and make this mistake. It's not about paying the income tax, it's not about making those
And the uniformity we're asking here in this best practices across all campuses or just within each institutional policy.
Don't say all, line, state line.
Okay.
Do I have a motion? This Lyles, do I have a second? About to say Ms. Lyles again. That's not good. All right, all those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion passes. Up next is adherence to Title IX when engaging in revenue sharing.
And this, is just kind of verbatim what it says. It's just recommending that institutions consider Title IX implications when engaging in revenue sharing, crafting NIL policies, and ensuring compliance with Title IX. That is essential to all treatment and fair treatment across all programs. I don't know if the other Joey want to chime in on that.
The only thing I would add to this is that our discussions with the Attorney General, she mentioned this. There to be some sensitivity to how I don't think anybody knows the age. Right, but be sensitive to how anything you sharing, particularly how it affects your having. Maybe that's can of worms kind of thing. Maybe that we talk about study resolutions and that sort of thing. Maybe this is one of those topics. Like Lawrence and those study. I don't know. I think everybody at some point will need to know the answers.
I think that needs to be covered in the funding piece, that's the funding issue.
Could do that,
Right.
Because that's a good question. That's interesting.
I know we did talk about that in our subcommittee. How this, but how from just an athletic department funding standpoint.
Any other possible discussion? If not, I'd like to ask for a motion on this item.
And what is the net effect? What does consider it mean? Just review it? Or consider it in terms of apply in some manner or Title IX compliance? Because again, it's been my conversation with that with directors. You know, the rev share going to the program for the revenue is coming. And while it may impact, but what do you do? You know, programs that is not bringing revenue, is who are bringing the revenue. That money is going to programs that is not bringing. We're already subsidizing that down in that fashion. So this is the kids' money, at least my kids' money. But what is this?
I think this goes back to what even Skip said earlier about the international students, sources of income, right? Like the question that remains that we still have no clarity on. Is that institutional NIL agreed and paying direct compensation to student athletes? Is that under Title IX requirements? Like, do we have to maintain Title IX balance with institutions? Because right now you see institutions that have come out with especially with the house settlement back damages, right? 75% to football student athletes, 15%
men's basketball student athletes, 5% to women's basketball student athletes, 5% to all other student athletes. That in itself did not adhere to Title IX requirements and the equity. But because of the back damages precedent that was set, a lot of athletic clubs are running through their current institutional NIL license agreements that we have with them, and for direct payments and relates to revenue share along those same percentages, because we feel like there's legal precedent that tells us we can do that. So I think that's the question that we have to answer, and we're not going to answer this one.
It's
That's
the
going to be
appeal.
answered. Yeah, that's going to be answered at a federal level when it comes to the Title IX. Yes.
We recommend who considered with the institution, do we need the Attorney General's office or do we need some other entity to get involved to help guide direction for the institutions in terms of how they apply it?
For you. I guess from our perspective, it's been something that we've talked about, it's something that we're not going to solve. So we just wanted to mention it because I think both are being appealed. The way that back pay is being done and the way that rev share is being done. And I think we're going to have to wait on that final answer. But we just wanted to be ahead of the game in the sense of at least referencing that it is something that schools should consider. The fact that we know that they're paying 90%, 80% football, not a lot of sports.
I think that was part of our conversation with the athletic department study resolution. How does this play into that aspect of it? If it is going to be a requirement that these patrons are studying, true. But see.
I'd like to ask for a motion to adopt this recommendation. I'll move. Private meeting, second, all those in favor, signify by saying aye. All those opposed. Motion passes. We already. All right. So, on behalf of myself and Rev. Young,
I guess if you don't mind, there were two things, one of which came up before that we kind of heard, sorry, it was, I feel that Public Records Act. And, we talked about maybe not addressing here, and I just wanted to let you know that it's still under discussion, in another forum. It's people who want to propose some changes to the Public Records Act that might include what we talked about here, but include some other things too. And remember, there was a notion of competitive disadvantage. So that if we have to produce a contract that a student has to, in a university, it's a private third person issue public money. There was some discussion about competitive disadvantage in conferences, even among schools within the state. So I just wanted to remind you that we had that conversation. Good to make sure that whatever happens on the public records front large, there's some consideration that is given. Not sure we want to put it, single it out in this bill. It's kind of like maybe a target on the bill when it's sort of sense. So that, and the second thing are good is the Attorney General has suggested that once the work here is done, briefing of the task force, that we continue to have some of these topics that we talked about, how we don't know the answer to, how they continue to emerge. Perhaps we form a kind of an advisory council, maybe the regents, the Attorney General, membership representation from the management board. It's not a big group, a group that kind of reviews this stuff. We've got a whole bunch of stuff going on with the College Sports Commission, NCAA, and Sports Act. Try to make sure that on a regular basis, we at least think about what's happening in the market, whether we can make additional change. So I'll offer that to you. Then I have one other request. Listen, can y'all tell me how many institutions, colleges, if any of them are signing or not signing the College Sports Commission letter? Did y'all get a letter from Texas Tech or from somebody asking you not to sign on to the college sports commission?
The only institution in this room that can sign that right now would be because they're part of the.
So nobody else?
The A4 groups has to sign it before it goes to any other additional institution.
There are some issues with, including if signing us. And that's a big problem. You know, you waive your right to get any remedy. And this environment, the only remedy you really have might be for somewhere. I was just curious about,
The deadline to sign it has come and gone.
Yeah.
And to my knowledge, not many at
All
all,
of
if any, signed it.
although,
Everyone, all 68 had to sign it before it could go in. Had to go in.
that's Jim, thank you.
So on behalf of myself and the young chairman, let me thank Ms. Lyles, Mr. Phillips, and Ms. Golden for their presentation and all of you guys outstanding work. Thank you so much. Just amazing amount of work you guys put into this. And I'd like to open the floor for any possible task force reflections before we go to public comments. Anyone?
I'll say, I'm gonna continue to express some gratitude to all you guys for being a resource for me. I started at UNO 6 months ago. So for you guys and helping out with my endeavors and my lack of knowledge and that the college realm has been awesome to see. And rising water creates all shit. So to see me raised up like that, I think it was special. You got to have you guys contribute and get UNO back where it needs to be. I think the UNO is a vital part of New Orleans and the state. So for having you guys help out means a lot to us.
Thank you for joining us. So at this time, we'll get to public comments, Ms. Golden. Any instructions on how we move forward? What's next?
So what our office will be working on with the attorney general's office is actually getting all these recommendations and from the legislative report, which is good in January. So we'll be working on that around the month of December and a little bit of January. So make sure that you all get it when time the circulating draft so that you have that input if needed. You can do some subcommittees if there's something that will address. But this is the crux of the report, plus and minus some historical information on past, current, of the precedent that needs to be including that, but other than that, I'll research the draft report.
So at this time, I'd like to open it up for public comments. And before we get started, I'd like to introduce a guest we have. This gentleman is president of basketball operations for the University of New Orleans, better known as Master P, Mr. Percy Miller. And I'm not going to tell them your record against me in the rec at LSU. Just so that you'd always ask to be on my team. Yeah, anything else?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you guys first for making a difference with this NIL task force, because you guys are doing something student athletes that's really necessary. So as being president of basketball operations at University of New Orleans and being assistant coach, I've seen it all from the mental health side to players losing it to players trying to figure out where they need to be, and then on the financial side, understanding players get this new wealth that they never had before, and parents having to deal with it, families having to deal with it. And that's what I was saying, that we're losing players, we're losing parents, parents are falling apart because now their kids are the head of the household. So being able to educate is so important. And we talk about Louisiana athletes, student athletes, most important is so important for us to show that love and to educate them and prepare them for this journey that they're going on. Because now it's just a year journey. It used to be 4 years. So now these athletes might come to a school for a year and then they transfer or go somewhere else, or their career's over, or they don't have this wealth after 4 years. So where's their mental, and they feel like they feel their parents or feel their family, because this NIL money for some families is it. Like most of these kids that we talked about, I had a situation where we're thinking that, okay, how do we educate the parents and how do we educate the kids? Because the kids never had the money before and the parents never had the money. And so now we're losing families now, because now you got an athlete thinking, well, I'm taking care the family now. I'm the parent. And so I'm trying to figure out how to come to a happy medium. And then even to our universities to figure out how to make this work. Because you got LSU, you got UNO, you got Southern, you got all these different smaller schools, how to be equal to be able to take care of the NIL side. So you guys are doing a great job. And I'm just glad to be able to be here to experience this, to say we got people that has our back that want to see a difference. And we have a good diverse group of people that has different opinions. I think this is the only way that we're going to be able to get to some solution. Yeah, and if we continue to keep doing this in love, I feel like we're going to help the next generation. And so I'm just grateful and thankful to be here. Thank you.
I think we got a lot of chronic problems today.
Right. Well, it's been lovely, everyone. Appreciate y'all. Honestly, what we've done here it's meaningful. We're not going to inhibit the process. We're just trying to help the process. We've heard from the smallest schools to the biggest. We understand where everyone's at. So we try to pass some meaningful legislation. And with that, I get a motion to adjourn. So move. Then second. All right. Second. Everybody be excited. I'm looking at it. Meeting is.
Oh my God.
It's been awesome.
We're gonna be like you guys.